A boy, holding a small compass, eyes filled with the light of curiosity. He didn't know it then, but that single question in his mind would one day bend time itself. His name was Albert Einstein. Join the journey, like, subscribe, and stay with us as we explore the mind that changed reality. Albert Einstein, the mind that changed time. March 14th, 1879, Ulm, Germany. A small apartment, an ordinary birth, and a child who speaks late and watches the world in silence. His parents worry, but his quiet is not emptiness, it is attention. At 5, his father shows him a brass compass. The needle moves without touch, always finding north. Invisible order, hidden force. The boy is stunned. If nothing pushes it, what rules it? That single doubt becomes a lifelong engine. He begins to chase patterns others overlook. The glint on a window, the rhythm of footsteps, the way shadows slide with the afternoon sun. Curiosity hardens into habit. He prefers questions to answers, meaning to memorization. Music from his mother's piano fills the house. Numbers from his workbooks fill his mind. In that mix of harmony and logic, a worldview forms. Wonder first, proof later. He will spend decades following the invisible, convinced that nature's secrets are simple, beautiful, and waiting for the right question. School collides with his temperament. Classrooms demand obedience. He demands understanding. Rote recitation feels like sleepwalking. He wants the reason behind every rule, the architecture beneath each fact. Teachers call him lazy, defiant, disrespectful. He is none of those. He is restless. At 16, he imagines riding alongside a beam of light. If he could keep pace, what would the wave look like? Would it freeze? Would time itself slow down? The thought is outrageous for a schoolboy, yet it grips him more tightly than any textbook. When his family relocates to Italy, he leaves the rigid German school system behind and studies independently. Zurich becomes his refuge. At the Polytechnic, he reads beyond the syllabus, devours geometry and Maxwell, and argues about philosophy with friends. He meets Mileva Maric, brilliant and determined, a rare woman in physics. They trade calculations and ambitions. To administrators, he is a troublesome student. To history, he is a mind assembling the pieces of a revolution. In 1902, he accepts a clerk's post at the Swiss Patent Office in Bern. The job looks small: examine devices, summarize claims, stamp forms. But monotony shelters genius. The quiet hours become a workshop for thought experiments. He studies moving trains, synchronized clocks, flashes of light. Scenarios built entirely in imagination, evaluated with ruthless logic. He calls the office his worldly cloister. Each patent triggers a deeper question. What is time when two clocks disagree? What is simultaneity when observers move differently? Evenings, he writes at a wobbly table, while the city darkens outside. In 1905, the dam breaks. 4 papers in 1 year. Light behaves as quanta. Brownian motion reveals atoms. Special relativity ties space and time to motion. And energy equals mass times the speed of light squared. E equals mc squared. Simple, shocking, inevitable. Without laboratory, funding, or title, a patent clerk redraws the map of reality. Few notice immediately, but physics has already turned. Special relativity is not a flourish, it is a demolition. For centuries, time was assumed universal, the same everywhere. Einstein shows that time flows differently for observers in motion. Length shrinks along the direction of travel. The speed of light is constant for all, an anchor in a shifting sea. Simultaneity, 2 events happening at once, depends on who measures it. These claims sound absurd, yet the mathematics is clean and the logic tight. The principle is humility before nature. Laws must be identical for all inertial observers, and experiments must yield the same speed of light. From those pillars, the conclusions follow like a proof in geometry. Resistance is fierce. Journals debate. Professors scoff. Max Planck, however, sees order in the upheaval and champions the young outsider. Special relativity is only the beginning. Gravity, the great remaining puzzle, cannot be a mysterious pull. It must be geometry itself. The fabric of space-time must bend. Recognition arrives slowly and expensively. After 1905, offers trickle in. First Zurich, then Prague, then Zurich again. He lectures with clarity and humor, but fame brings strain. He and Mileva grow apart under the weight of work, children, money, and relentless attention. Still, he pushes onward, convinced that special relativity is incomplete. It works for constant motion, not for acceleration or gravity. He studies Riemannian geometry, hunts for field equations that let matter tell space-time how to curve and curvature tell matter how to move. Weeks stretch into years. Pages fill with symbols, then end in failure and begin again. He is close, then lost, then closer. Friends worry about his health. He shrugs and returns to the chalkboard. By 1915, he is ready to present a new theory to the Prussian Academy. If he is right, light will bend near the sun, Mercury's orbit will make sense, and gravity will no longer be a force, but the shape of reality itself. By 1911, Einstein knew his special theory of relativity was only half the story. It described motion at constant speed but ignored gravity, the invisible architect of the cosmos. To understand it, he needed new mathematics, so he turned to the geometry of curved surfaces. What if space itself could bend? What if time wasn't uniform but stretched around massive objects like stars? These questions became his obsession. Between 1912 and 1915, he worked endlessly, pacing his room, filling notebooks, writing equations that looped back on themselves. His health suffered, his marriage collapsed, and he often went hungry. Yet he never stopped. Then, in late 1915, the final form appeared. The general theory of relativity. Gravity, he realized, wasn't a force pulling things together. It was the bending of space and time caused by mass and energy. For the first time, the universe had a language elegant enough to describe itself. Even with the equations complete, Einstein's new universe was still an idea, beautiful but unproven. The world demanded evidence. His theory predicted that light would bend when passing near a massive object, such as the sun. But who could test such a thing? The opportunity came in 1919 during a total solar eclipse. British astronomer Arthur Eddington led an expedition to photograph starlight near the darkened sun. If Einstein was right, the star's apparent positions would shift. For months, the plates were analyzed in silence. Then the result came. The light had bent exactly as predicted. Newspapers exploded. Newton overthrown. Einstein's theory triumphs. Overnight, the unknown scientist from Bern became a global icon. Crowds followed him through the streets. Children sent him letters. The quiet clerk who once questioned everything now stood as proof that imagination could measure the universe. Fame hit Einstein like a tidal wave. He toured Europe and America, meeting kings, presidents, and philosophers. Journalists described his wild hair and absent-minded charm. Yet behind the smile, he was uneasy. He distrusted celebrity and preferred solitude. "It is strange," he said, "to be known by so many and yet so lonely." His lectures filled grand halls, but his thoughts were already elsewhere, searching for the next great question. He wanted to unify the laws of physics, to weave gravity and electromagnetism into a single theory. Meanwhile, the world outside grew darker. Political tensions spread through post-war Europe, anti-Semitism returned, and nationalism rose. Einstein used his new fame to speak for peace and reason. He warned that ignorance and hatred could destroy civilization faster than any scientific discovery. His voice, calm but urgent, made him more than a physicist. It made him a conscience for the modern age. Fame brought admiration, but also isolation. Einstein's marriage to Mileva ended in divorce. Their letters revealed pain, distance, and regret. Two brilliant minds who had once shared the same dream now torn apart by ambition and exhaustion. He later remarried his cousin, Elsa, seeking comfort and familiarity. His personal life was fragile, but his intellectual world burned bright. As the 1920s began, he became the symbol of genius itself, the living face of science. Yet criticism persisted. Many scientists resisted relativity. Some even accused him of fraud. In Germany, extremist groups labeled his work Jewish physics and tried to discredit him. Einstein endured the hatred with calm irony. "Great spirits," he said, "have always encountered violent opposition from mediocre minds." He carried on teaching, composing music, and searching for unity in a divided world, unaware that soon history would test him harder than any equation. In 1933, the storm finally broke. Adolf Hitler came to power, and Germany became a place Einstein could no longer call home. His books were burned, his name erased from universities, and his safety was in danger. He fled first to Belgium, then to England, and finally settled in Princeton, New Jersey. There, at the Institute for Advanced Study, he found peace, a quiet office, a blackboard, and endless questions. But the world he left behind descended into chaos. As fascism spread across Europe, Einstein's fame became a shield for truth. He used it to raise funds for refugees, condemn violence, and support Jewish scientists escaping persecution. In exile, he felt both free and powerless. The country that had once celebrated his genius now hunted people like him. Yet he refused bitterness. "I love humanity," he wrote, "but I cannot stand its leaders." In Princeton, Einstein lived simply. His office was bare, except for chalk, paper, and a violin. But letters poured in. Students seeking guidance, leaders requesting advice, and strangers thanking him for giving meaning to curiosity. He answered many himself, writing in blue ink with small, careful handwriting. To him, communication mattered as much as discovery. He believed science was not a private luxury, but a public duty. His replies were filled with warmth and irony. Try to become not a man of success, but rather a man of value. He refused to be placed on a pedestal, insisting that knowledge must serve compassion. Even as his fame reached mythic levels, he never forgot the compass that started it all. Behind every theory stood a question, and behind every question, a moral choice. What will humanity do with what it learns? The 1930s became the age of fear. Fascism spread like wildfire, and the same science that illuminated truth was being twisted into weapons. Einstein, a Jew and a pacifist, became a target for Nazi propaganda. Posters showed his face crossed out in black ink. Books on relativity were burned in public squares. He spoke out loudly, warning that nationalism would destroy reason itself. But Europe wasn't listening. He accepted an invitation to the United States and left Germany forever. In 1933, his apartment in Berlin was raided. On the desk, they found his violin, a few notebooks, and a letter that read, "I will never return." It wasn't just exile from a country. It was exile from the world he had hoped humanity would build. The physicist of light was now walking through the shadows of history. As World War II erupted, Einstein watched from afar in grief and disbelief. The same century that had unlocked the atom was now using it to destroy. In 1939, fellow scientists persuaded him to sign a letter to President Franklin Roosevelt, warning that Nazi Germany might build a bomb from uranium. That letter became the spark that started the Manhattan Project. Einstein later called it his greatest regret. "I only wanted to alert," he said, "not to unleash." He refused to participate in weapons research, dedicating the rest of his life to peace. Yet the irony haunted him. The equation E equals mc squared, written to explain nature's beauty, had opened the gates to humanity's darkest power. He understood too late that knowledge without conscience can be more dangerous than ignorance itself. After the war, Einstein became more than a scientist. He became a moral voice. He spoke for disarmament, civil rights, and unity among nations. When Princeton University offered him sanctuary, he accepted but never grew complacent. He joined campaigns against racism, defended refugees, and warned that blind patriotism was humanity's oldest disease. "Peace cannot be kept by force," he said. "It can only be achieved by understanding." Governments tried to silence him. Newspapers called him naive. Yet his calm defiance made him a symbol of integrity. He refused political power, even declining an offer to become president of Israel in 1952. "I know something of nature," he joked, "but nothing of people." Beneath the humor was sadness. He had spent a lifetime revealing cosmic harmony, yet he saw human beings still trapped in chaos. In his later years, Einstein turned his attention to one final challenge: the unified field theory. He wanted one equation that would connect every force in the universe: gravity, electromagnetism, and perhaps the mysterious quantum world. Each morning he walked to his office, hair uncombed, pipe in hand, scribbling ideas on scraps of paper. He often said, "I have become a lonely old man who tries to capture something that cannot be caught." Quantum mechanics, led by younger physicists like Bohr and Heisenberg, contradicted his instincts. They claimed uncertainty ruled the microscopic world. Einstein refused to believe it. "God does not play dice with the universe," he said. His search for unity became less about physics and more about faith. The belief that the universe, at its core, was rational, beautiful, and worth understanding. By the late 1940s, Einstein had become more than a scientist. He was a global moral compass. Governments sought his endorsement, movements quoted his words, and people wrote him from every corner of the world. Yet he lived simply, walking to his office at Princeton with worn shoes and an absent smile. In 1952, after the death of Israel's first president, David Ben-Gurion offered Einstein the presidency of the new nation. He declined, saying, "I am deeply touched, but I lack both the natural aptitude and experience to deal with people properly." That humility defined him. He believed that truth could never serve ambition. "My political ideal," he wrote, "is democracy. Let every man be respected as an individual and no man idolized." He remained detached from power, yet his words influenced more leaders than most politicians ever could. Fame never brought comfort. Einstein once said, "To punish me for my contempt of authority, fate made me an authority myself." He was constantly approached by journalists, students, and admirers seeking wisdom, but he preferred solitude. He would escape into music, playing Mozart on his violin, to untangle ideas that formulas could not. Though he loved humanity, he found individual behavior confusing. "It is harder," he joked, "to understand people than to understand the universe." Behind the humor lay exhaustion. His theories had changed the world, yet the world itself had grown more dangerous. Nuclear weapons, Cold War paranoia, and political tension filled the headlines. Einstein's face had become the symbol of intelligence. printed on posters, magazines, even advertisements. But behind that smile was a man wrestling with guilt, responsibility, and the eternal question: had science gone too far? Einstein's relationship with quantum mechanics was both respectful and rebellious. He helped build its foundation but rejected its randomness. Quantum theory claimed that particles behaved unpredictably, that probability governed reality. Einstein disagreed. "The Lord is subtle," he said, "but he is not malicious." To him, uncertainty was an illusion created by incomplete understanding. His debates with Niels Bohr became legendary, two giants arguing over the nature of truth itself. Bohr insisted that reality depended on observation. Einstein believed it existed independently of us. Neither could fully convince the other. Their clash symbolized the deeper divide between control and chaos, faith and doubt. Even in disagreement, they respected each other deeply. Einstein once told Bohr, "I do not believe in your theory, but I believe in you." It was not just a scientific rivalry. It was a philosophical duel that still defines physics today. As he grew older, Einstein's interests moved beyond equations. He began writing about human rights, education, and peace. He called racism America's worst disease and joined the NAACP alongside W.E.B. Du Bois. When the FBI labeled him a potential threat during the McCarthy era, he laughed. "If my ideas are dangerous," he said, "then freedom itself is in danger." He spent his final years mentoring young scientists, encouraging them to think independently, to resist conformity. He believed curiosity was humanity's greatest strength and its only hope. Letters from around the world filled his mailbox, from children who dreamed of being scientists to soldiers seeking forgiveness. He answered with kindness and humor, often signing simply, A. Einstein. The man who once searched for the equation of gravity now searched for the equation of empathy, proof that compassion, too, could shape the universe. In April 1955, Einstein fell ill with an abdominal aneurysm. Doctors urged surgery, but he refused. "It is tasteless," he said, "to prolong life artificially. I have done my share. It is time to go." He spent his last hours writing equations, his handwriting trembling, but his thoughts still sharp. At dawn on April 18th, he whispered a few words in German. No one in the room understood them, and then he was gone. The newspapers mourned a genius, but those who knew him felt something deeper. The loss of a man who taught humanity to question everything, even time itself. His brain was preserved for study. His ashes were scattered quietly. He had once said, "Our death is not an end if we have lived wisely." Einstein's life proved that wisdom is not knowing all the answers. It is never stopping the questions. After his death, Einstein's body was cremated. But his brain was taken by the pathologist Thomas Harvey without the family's permission. Harvey believed that studying it might reveal the secret of genius. For decades, he preserved the brain in glass jars, cutting it into hundreds of thin slices. The mystery only deepened. Scientists found no magical region, no genius organ. The brain looked remarkably ordinary, except for one thing. The area responsible for spatial reasoning and imagination was unusually developed. It was a reminder that brilliance isn't born from size or shape, but from the way one uses the gift of curiosity. Einstein himself would have laughed at the idea of dissecting inspiration. He once said, "The true sign of intelligence is not knowledge, but imagination." His mind may have been divided for study, but his spirit multiplied across every generation that still asks why. Einstein's theories outlived him, quietly guiding the technology of the modern world. Every GPS signal, satellite orbit, and digital clock relies on relativity. Without his equations, our maps would drift miles off course each day. Space travel, nuclear power, lasers, and even the concept of black holes all trace their roots to his papers from 1905 and 1915. Scientists like Stephen Hawking, Kip Thorne, and countless others built on his foundation, extending his ideas into cosmic extremes. Yet Einstein himself would not have claimed ownership. He saw discovery as a relay, not a race. "We are all children of the universe," he said, trying to read her thoughts. The man who once worked alone in a patent office unknowingly wrote the operating manual for the future, not just for physics, but for how humanity could think beyond its limits. Over time, the name Einstein stopped being just a name. It became a symbol of intellect, rebellion, and wonder. His image, with the wild hair and kind eyes, appeared everywhere, on posters, mugs, cartoons, and t-shirts. People quoted him, misquoted him, and even invented sayings he never uttered. The world turned him into an icon of brilliance, a shorthand for genius itself. Yet behind the myth was a man who doubted constantly, failed often, and questioned his own ideas more than anyone else. He once said, "The more I learn, the more I realize how much I don't know." That humility was his real strength. The legend of Einstein reminds us that greatness doesn't come from knowing everything. It comes from never losing the desire to learn. He wasn't a magician of math. He was proof that curiosity is the most human form of courage. The decades after Einstein's death transformed his ideas from theory into reality. Satellites proved that time moves slower in orbit than on Earth. Light bent exactly as his equations predicted. Black holes, once a mathematical curiosity, were photographed a century after his prediction. The more we learned, the more right he seemed. Physicists now explore gravitational waves, ripples in space-time that Einstein first imagined but doubted could ever be detected. In 2015, 100 years after general relativity, they were finally observed. Even from beyond the grave, he continued to be correct. Yet his legacy wasn't perfection, it was perseverance. He showed that truth unfolds slowly, that understanding the universe is not a destination but a process. Every new discovery still carries his fingerprint, the gentle reminder that imagination is the first step toward reality. Einstein believed science without philosophy was blind. To him, equations were only as valuable as the wisdom they inspired. He questioned not just how the universe worked, but why it worked that way. In essays and interviews, he spoke about ethics, responsibility, and the need for moral progress to match technological progress. "Our technology has surpassed our humanity," he warned, decades before the digital age proved him right. He urged scientists to remain humble, to see discovery as service, not conquest. He valued beauty in simplicity, truth in uncertainty, and compassion over control. Even as physics grew more complex, his words reminded generations that curiosity must never lose conscience. For Einstein, understanding nature was sacred work, not for profit, not for power, but to keep humanity connected to the wonder that created it. Einstein's theories didn't end with him. They became the foundation on which modern science stands. The 20th century produced entire generations of scientists raised on his ideas, Einstein's children, as some called them. They used relativity to explore black holes, to understand the birth of the universe, and to shape technologies that changed everyday life. Yet beyond the math, they inherited his spirit of defiance, the courage to ask uncomfortable questions. His name became a quiet challenge whispered across laboratories. Think differently. Even in computer science and neuroscience, echoes of his curiosity remain. The digital age, built on logic and light, is a direct descendant of the equations he wrote in solitude. Each discovery since then, from quantum computing to gravitational waves, is a footnote to his imagination. He showed that progress doesn't start with certainty. It starts with wonder. Einstein's legacy is more than physics. It is a mirror reflecting what it means to be human. He proved that intellect alone is not enough. Empathy must guide knowledge. Despite global fame, he lived modestly, owning little, walking everywhere, and laughing often. He believed humor kept the mind flexible. Life is like riding a bicycle, he said. To keep your balance, you must keep moving. For him, that balance meant harmony between curiosity and compassion. He supported pacifism, civil rights, and free thought, even when those beliefs made him unpopular. To students, he offered a simple rule: never stop questioning. His life, filled with doubt and discovery, became a metaphor for humanity's search for meaning. He reminded us that the universe doesn't owe us clarity. We must earn it through kindness, courage, and the constant pursuit of truth. Decades after his death, Einstein remains the face of genius in the collective imagination. His portraits hang in classrooms, museums, and even dorm rooms across the world. Scientists still quote him. Filmmakers still invoke his image when explaining the impossible. When humanity photographed a black hole in 2019, it felt like a cosmic nod from Einstein himself. His equations had predicted that shadow long before any telescope could see it. Yet in an age obsessed with speed and consumption, his message feels more urgent than ever. He warned that technology without purpose would turn tools into traps. Today, his words echo across the internet. We cannot solve our problems with the same thinking we used when we created them. Einstein's mind belonged to the past century, but his wisdom was written for the one we live in now. Einstein's greatest discoveries were not equations. They were perspectives. He taught us that time is flexible, that energy hides inside matter, that reality depends on where we stand. But behind those ideas lies a deeper truth. The universe rewards curiosity more than certainty. He showed that questions can be more powerful than answers, that humility is the scientist's highest virtue. His life is proof that imagination is not fantasy, but a force, one that bends reality just as gravity bends space. He once said, "There are two ways to live, as if nothing is a miracle, or as if everything is." The world he left behind still struggles between those two choices. His story reminds us that science is not a cold pursuit of facts. It is a warm search for connection between mind and cosmos, between knowledge and meaning. Einstein's journey began with a compass needle turning in silence. It ended with the bending of starlight, the reshaping of time, and the awakening of a new cosmic imagination. He sought not wealth, not fame, but understanding. And in that search, he changed what it means to understand it all. The universe he revealed is not mechanical. It is alive with mystery. Every second, as clocks tick differently in distant galaxies, his theories whisper that reality is deeper than perception. But perhaps his most important discovery was human. That wonder itself is sacred. He showed us that intellect without empathy is hollow, and curiosity without humility is blind. A century later, his light still travels. Across galaxies, across generations, across the hearts of those who dare to ask. Because in the end, Einstein's truth was simple. The more we learn about the universe, the more we learn about ourselves.